If I had my way, everything would be so nice. This world would be like Paris. No, it would be a paradise. No one would ever have to say, I'm gonna get my wish someday. All one would have to do is say, this is my order, if you may.
Welcome to another episode of The School Without Walls. I'm Antonio Hobbs, host and founder of this educational program. This program is designed primarily to reach the African American community, to elevate the African American community first spiritually, educationally, and economically. My guest today is Miss Vivian L. Flowers. Glad to have you.
Very glad to be here. Thank you.
What I'd like for you to do, I know something about your background.
Yes, sir.
But I like to go back to about the fourth generation of successful people, which is unusual among African Americans. So your great-grandfather was born at Stamps, I understand, lived in Stamps, Arkansas, right?
Yes,
your great-grandfather?
Yes.
What did he do?
My great-grandfather sold insurance.
He's an insurance salesman?
Yes.
And I understand he had a store.
Yes, he and my grandmother operated a store in Stamps, Arkansas. And I know that my great-grandmother was also very active in helping to promote education and training around agricultural techniques and just being a community advocate, but very focused on helping young people get an education.
And they were landowners, weren't they not?
Yes, sir.
That is wonderful and unusual. Now, your grandfather was an MD, is that right?
Yes.
Okay, what was his name?
Well, I called him Papa, but his name was Cleon Aurelius Flowers, right. Sr. Yes.
And of course, your dad is an MD.
Yes, sir.
Mm-hmm.
John Flowers. He is a pediatrician here, still in Pine Bluff, Arkansas.
Now, what happened that you did not pursue? Did you ever think of medicine yourself?
I did when I was much, much younger. But of course, at that age, I thought about being a beautician. Oh, yeah. I thought about being an obstetrician gynecologist. I thought about being a nurse, and then I wanted to be a businesswoman and a lawyer. I mean, there were a lot of things that I wanted to do, and I'm just thankful that I had the family support to, pursue my interests. And eventually, I found my passion in public service through politics and government, and sort of found my way to serve through the work that I do at UAMS. And what I do is, actually my title just changed, and with it some of my responsibilities, but I started at the University of Arkansas for Medical Sciences, which is the state's only academic health center, in 6 years ago, April 2nd.
Is that right?
Time has flown by very quickly.
Was this after you graduated from the Clinton School?
It was right after I graduated from the Clinton School.
6 years ago?
Yes, sir.
Okay, let's pinpoint that. Let's go back to your education. Come up to that.
Okay.
Now, you graduated from high school, I assume, here in Pine Bluff?
Actually, no. I was born here, so I'm definitely a native Pine Bluffian, but I was raised in California because that's where my dad did his residency.
Sure did.
However, I've always sort of felt and treated Pine Bluff as home, and we used to sort of always talk about, well, we're moving home, fill in the blank. And we ended up moving home when I graduated high school. So my brother completed his high school education here. I completed mine in Torrance, California at Nathaniel Narbonne High School.
And what college did you attend, your bachelor's?
I started at Howard University, which is, I always say that's where I got my education about life and found my interest in political science. But I moved home finally to Arkansas, and I always say University of Arkansas Little Rock is where I got my learning. That's where I got my degree and found myself academically. And also I attended summer school here at UAPB, so I definitely claim my alumnus status here as well.
Great, great. And then you went on to the master's with the Clinton School?
Right. So I got my bachelor's degrees. I majored in political science and found my passion for writing, and I think a little bit of talent, just a little bit, in writing, and discovered the professional technical writing degree program at UALR. And so I got my bachelor's degrees in those areas, and sort of throughout that process of completing my education, because I did so on a part-time basis for the most part, I did a lot of different public service related work, whether it was working on political campaigns, or eventually I worked for the Bureau of Legislative Research, where I learned a great deal about a lot of different subject matter just because I worked for legislative committees. So I learned a lot about agriculture and public health and children and family youth issues, and got to meet a lot of people who were making a difference in the state through policy. Eventually I started working for the Arkansas Legislative Black Caucus and did some of that same work in that capacity. And in between all of that, I worked for the University of Arkansas Department of Agriculture, which sort of leads and oversees, or is sort of the hub for the cooperative extension here in the state of Arkansas, as well as our land grant institutional research entities. And then I worked in the nonprofit sector for the Center for Healing Hearts and Spirits in Little Rock. Joyce Rayner, who is just a public service rock star. I learned a great deal under her tutelage. So it was sort of an amalgamation of all of that work in different areas, but still under the, I think, umbrella of public service, that I decided to pursue my master's in public service. And it was a new program, and I learned a lot about the program because as they were developing it within the University of Arkansas system, I was sort of privy to that because at the time I was in the same building working for the Department of Agriculture, or the Division of Agriculture.
And that's the Clinton School that you're referring to?
Right. So
Let us stop on that for break, and we'll be back in just a few seconds.
Okay.
Okay.
Michael Adams?
Here.
Michael Adams?
Here.
Michael Adams.
Michael Adams.
Students who miss 18 days of school in any grade risk falling behind and not graduating. Absences add up. Keep track at boostattendance.org today.
Hi, my name is Danny Andre Burrell II, a senior here majoring in industrial technology, management, and applied engineering. I thought that I would be looking for a job at this point, but thanks to my mentor, Dr. Charles Colin at Career Services, I was able to obtain a position as an industrial engineer upon graduation.
Danny worked hard in class from the beginning, obtaining 3 internships while on campus. UAPB can help prepare students like Danny for those same opportunities.
UAPB prepared me.
To Maddie, congrats on paying off all those student loans.
Finally, right?
How'd you manage that anyway?
I started tracking my spending, changed a couple of habits.
Wow. I'm kind of living paycheck to paycheck right now. I don't even know how I'm doing it.
Well, have you tried saving a little?
I want to, but where's that money gonna come from? Bill collectors, they're the worst. Am I right?
When it comes to financial stability, don't get left behind.
Not home.
Get tools and tips for saving at feedthepig.org.
Now it's time for This Week in Bad Stats.
Bad stats?
Horrible stats. Here goes. 260.
That's how many runs were walked in with the bases loaded last season.
Wow, very good. Here's a tough one, though. 3 and 4.
No idea.
That's the number of kids who witnessed bullying. 3 out of 4.
Not a good stat.
No, it's not, but that can change. Kids want to help, but they don't know how. You can visit stopbullying.gov and give them the tools they need to help prevent bullying.
There are plenty of safe ways kids can help at stopbullying.gov.
Those of you who have just joined us, I'm Antonio Hobbs, host of this educational program called The School Without Walls, and my guest is Miss Vivian L. Flowers. Ms. Flowers, we were talking about your career just on the other side of the break.
Yes.
You were on your way to the Clinton School.
I was on my way.
Yeah,
I was sort of already there in that I got to see all of the processes that went into building the school. Since I was working at the UA system office for the Division of Agriculture. And that's sort of where my interest was piqued, and I learned about the curriculum, and of course it was connected to then President Bill Clinton, and so I was really intrigued. And when sort of everything came online and I was able to apply, I knew that that's what I wanted to do, and I did it. And I did it as a part of the inaugural class, so it was an amazing experience. I was, at the time, the only Arkansan who lived in Arkansas who was a student
in the
program.
Was that in the school or the program? I'm not clear.
At the Clinton School.
Clinton
so
School.
It started out, there were 16 people accepted to the program, and there were 3 of us who were black, and I say black, I was the only African American. The other 2 black students were from Africa, one from Tanzania and one from Cameroon. And then I think those were the only 2 international students, and 13 of us ended up graduating together from that class, but we all forged a bond because of the things that we were learning together, whether it was our coursework or the practicum work that we were doing in Helena. And at the time, it was still Helena and West Helena, and they were in the process of becoming one city called Helena, West Helena, and I learned a lot.
What were some of the things that you were doing down there in Helena?
So we were sort of divided. This is interesting because we were sort of divided in different areas. So I worked with Nancy Mancia and Jean-Pierre Bacolo, and we were sort of the education group. And what we ended up doing is connecting with the Boys and Girls Club and the group in Helena, West Helena, that was sort of bringing about the change, to figure out how could we best, what kind of project could we work on that could best impact education at the time. And the thing that we decided to do was to develop a sort of a mentorship program. And so what we did was design the program. We applied for grant money, because I think at the time, that spring, I took a class on grant writing, and so I wrote a grant for the program at the time. And I understand that it's something later that the Boys and Girls Club, I believe they attempted to use the model. And they're so close. I feel bad that I haven't gone back to see what happens, but you know, life happens. But yes, it was a wonderful experience, because we worked with some great people who were so committed, and who still are so committed to their community, and making sure that young people have opportunities. And I said it's interesting when you asked me that question, because I had no idea at the time that I would, you know, a few years later, the next year, be offered a job opportunity to do some of that same work, you know, in a different arena. But and it has been incredibly rewarding. The best part of my job is working with students, because I think a lot of us take for granted, especially the students that, you know, are successful students or have the desire, and they, you know, are in different programs, or they make it to college, that they sort of have it. They sort of already know it. And you know, when you think back to when you're 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 years old, you don't know much of anything.
Hadn't had enough experience.
Yeah,
right?
well, because you don't get the exposure unless someone,
mentoring is so important.
right?
Mentoring.
Unless someone says, "Hey, let me show you something,"
right.
or ask you, "What's your major? Let me figure out how I can help you. Have you started doing this? Have you started preparing that way?" And that's largely, you know, the work we do in terms of recruitment. We make connection with students throughout the pipeline, and I'm speaking of the work that I do at UAMS
now
in the Center for Diversity Affairs. Yes.
We have about one more minute, I
Yes.
think, in this section. I had a question I wanted to ask you about that. What was the duration of the time that you were in Helena, West Helena? Like months or a year? Or?
Really about 2 semesters.
About 2
I mean,
semesters?
the class lasted a semester, but our work extended a little bit beyond that.
Were you in residence down there? Did you
No,
commute from some
we would
place?
commute.
From Little Rock?
From Little Rock, yes.
Is that daily or?
No, I want to say at least once a week, maybe sometimes 2, depending on if we had to engage in a meeting, because a lot of the work we did was getting buy-in from the community and feedback about how to proceed with the program, whether it was the school system or whether it was the chamber and that kind of thing.
You know, we mentioned mentoring. That's one of the things I emphasize on this program. For about a minute, what could you say about mentoring? I think you are actually involved in mentoring now, aren't you?
Yes, through an organization that we partner with at UAMS, the Arkansas Mentoring and Networking Association. We work with Mr. Al Ashley, who's been nationally recognized for the work that he's done in that area, and I've learned a great deal from him. One thing I do know, though, is that no student who is successful, no professional who is successful finds success without mentorship.
That's right. You got to have it.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, but as we said earlier, we are too young to know very much in 20 or 25 years, especially in your teenagers.
That's right.
But even after you get your degree, you still need a mentor.
That's right.
Somebody's going along ahead of you. We're going to stop on this, and we'll be back in just a few minutes.
Crack down on that. Found their way out of this.
Getting closer to nature can get you closer to your family. Go to discovertheforest.org.
Looking for these? You drive buzzed. It could be one very expensive ride.
First, you gotta make bail. Then pay me to get your car back.
Your insurance premiums will go through the roof.
And my legal fees just keep adding up. All told, it could end up costing you $10,000.
Buzzed, busted, and broke. Because buzz driving is drunk driving.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kira Phillips from HLN's Raising America. You know, as a parent, you want to make sure that your child knows how to deal with bullying when they see it happening. And chances are they want to help but don't know how. So teach them that the best thing to do is calmly walk away, find a teacher or another adult and speak up. And do your part. Be the adult that they can talk to and trust to listen. Join me to help stop bullying. Go to stopbullying.gov to find out more.
I've got a job to do today.
I've got a job to do today.
Have a good first day at work, Mom.
Your donations to Goodwill fund job training programs right in your community.
Feels good to start fresh, right?
Sure does. And like that, you're a job creator.
Those of you who have just joined us, I'm Antonio Hobbs, host of this educational program called The School Without Walls. My guest is Miss Vivian L. Flowers. Miss Flowers, let's talk about that lovely mother of yours. I call her my Mary.
Yeah, she was, I say she's my Mary first, and I guess she was John's Mary before that.
There you go, there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, she is an educated person. She has a degree, right?
She is. She is an alumnus here of, she'll say AM&N UAPB.
Okay, she did the AM&N.
Yes.
Yeah. What was her major?
Sociology, and for several years after she graduated, she worked as a social worker my mother has always been service-minded, and I would say that from both sides of my family, it's just natural and in me. My grandmother, for whom I was named for both of my grandmothers.
Is that right?
Yes, my father's mother's name is Levita. People knew her as Martha, but her middle name was Levita. And my mother's mother is Vivian. And my grandmother, Jurgen, was a day worker. She was a stay-at-home mom at some point, but mostly worked very hard. My mother will tell the story all the time of how hard they worked, and they were a family of 8 children, and it was them and their parents. My grandmother.
Where was she born, your mother?
My mother was born in Lone Oak.
Lone Oak?
Yes. And her mother was born in Rowe, Arkansas. No, she was born in Alabama.
Oh, she was?
But grew up in Rowe.
When she was young?
Yes.
Yeah, do you know where Rowe is?
I have seen the sign on the way somewhere.
I used to have a church in Rowe, Arkansas.
Really?
Yeah, I know exactly where it is.
Yeah.
A little village. Quaint village, okay.
And my grandfather, George Hubert Jurgen, was from Alabama also, and they built a home and a life in Little Rock, and in Lone Oak, and eventually moved to Little Rock, and raised 8 children, all of whom went to college except one who went to the service, and he helped. That was the oldest, my Uncle Theodis. He helped put all of them through college. So, with a different, level of privilege and access, or whatever you want to call it, their commitment to education was just as strong as my family here from Pine Bluff, the Flowers family, and so I just feel very blessed to have been enriched with those influences.
How many siblings does your mother have?
So she started off with 7.
Started out with 7.
But 3 have passed. So it's 4 of them left, and everybody except one is here. But everybody went to UAPB except one.
Yeah. You want to name those who are still living? Those who are living here?
So Mrs. Also named after Vivian, Yvonne Gentry, and she was an educator here in Pine Bluff and also in Little Rock. And then Benny Jurgen Davis Waller, she was an educator in Chicago and still works part-time in education here, even though she's retired. She lives in North Little Rock. And then my uncle Scotty, he didn't attend UAPB, he attended Tennessee State, and his name is Irvin Scott Jurgen, and he lives in Lone Oak.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Back home.
Back home. So they just have always been service-minded and have known and understood how important education was. And I would also add that, an important part of what I try to talk to students about is giving back. And my mother has been a great example in what she's tried to give back in the community here, wherever we've been. She's always been involved, whether she worked full-time or not, and she's done a lot to give back here to UAPB, and so she and my father are examples of public service that I've tried to follow. And so even in my job, I see that as service and try to help all students and try beyond the individual work impact systems in a way where people can come after me or after the team, that's the Center for Diversity Affairs at UAMS, to continue the work and provide mentorship and provide information for students and programming for academic enrichment.
Is that the main purpose of that center, is mentorship? What is the main purpose?
So the main purpose is for, I would say primarily, student recruitment and retention, the recruitment and retention of underrepresented minority students, but we also focus a great deal on the recruitment and retention of faculty at UAMS, which is probably an even more challenging area of work. We work in the area of cultivating a stronger and more diverse and inclusive campus environment through a number of activities, whether it's the committee work that we do or engaging the community outside.
Let me cut you off. We
Yes.
have about 2 minutes.
Okay.
Now what I want you to do is speak directly to young women. You might have noticed this. I have a concern about the dress of many of our young women. Have you noticed how many of them dress so loosely and expose so much of their body? Do you think that's the best thing for them?
Well, let me say this. I think that when you have teens, there's always going to be a sort of what they called in the past a counterculture. You know, I think young women, just like young men, are going to be influenced by what they see in the media, what they see each other doing. I remember watching movies, and in my parents' day, there were different styles, the micro mini and the hot pants that people that their parents thought was like inappropriate and was going to be the death of us, of the community. So, I mean, I think some of that is natural, but I think more than focusing on the dress, and it is important. I think it's important for us when we see a young woman, or really a young man, just young people, in an environment where they're supposed to be professional and they're not dressed professionally.
Right.
I think that's the conversation.
That's what I have reference to, like on the college campus.
Right.
Many of them don't seem to understand that they are preparing themselves to be, and they're dressed like they might be on a beach somewhere.
Well, but I think we have to be the example. I think that when we make that the issue, sometimes we can risk losing young people. I think if we're the example, and I think if we commit ourselves to mentoring young people and making sure that they go in the right direction, when they go to a conference or when they go to a room, a classroom or a meeting, and they see their peers dressed professionally and they're not, that's when they're going to get in line. And so I wouldn't focus just on young women. I think that African American women and men, and really young people across the board, we are responsible for their growth and development. And I think that's why the work at UAMS and the Center for Diversity Affairs and the Arkansas Mentoring and Networking Association are critically important. Or even the program that is here that we've helped partner with, the Beyond the Bricks project. All of those kinds of programs are critically important because it provides a place for young people to be enriched, whether it's academic enrichment or to be mentored, to learn the things that they need to know so that they can prepare and so that they can see, okay, this is my next step. This is how I need to be dressing. This is how I need to be speaking. Because they ask, when they see you're interested and you really care, they want to know.
I see.
So we just have to be there for them and stand in the gap for them and with them and make sure that they transition from being children to young men and women who are successful.
Okay, I believe we can stop on that, can't we, Randy? We have about a half a minute. I want to thank you for being with us.
And if I could just ask for parents and for advisors and counselors to contact the Center for Diversity Affairs by phone, 501-686-7299. Or you can email us at cda@uams.edu.
We can have that on the screen, I'm not sure.
Okay.
But now, once they reach you, what service will you have for them?
If any students are interested in a career in health, in summer programs, in mentorship, in student advising, in receiving a tour.
Will that have to be at UMS?
UAMS. UAMS.
Okay, all right.
And we actually have a regional center formerly known as the AHEC right here. LaSonia Shelby does great work as a recruiter for that AHEC or for the regional center Southeast right here in Pine Bluff. And we have those kinds of centers situated throughout the state. So there are a lot of programs, a lot of opportunities, and a lot of resources for helping young people. And so I just thank you for letting me on today to talk about that.
Pleasure having you.
Thanks.
You might come back again sometime.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay.